Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 805. You know, the numbers are getting large enough where I can't say them smoothly. That's terrible. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
A.K.A. Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you
You
here.
must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to cover some F1 news, of course. That's what we do on off-race weekends. We talk about whatever's going on in Formula One, but not everything. It's impossible to get there. However, that means I have to introduce my co-host tonight. And you know what that means. That means that we have to, through the magic, compute to magic, we have to go all the way to the right coast of our nation, nestled in our nation's capital, where she applies her skills as a master statistician and quite the cat owner, it must be said. You know her. You love her. It is...
Grace!
Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, and apparently so is Mikasa.
Yes. Well, you know, it's bodes well that the podcast should start off on the YouTube version of our podcast with a cat in your lap.
You know, usually somebody shows up at some point.
One of them does.
But nobody waited today. Right in there.
Yeah, I got two crazy mini Australian Shepherds, and that would not be good if I let them in here.
Oh, it would be fun, you know.
Oh.
Come on, we want to see the zoomies around your office
Oh,
and
yeah,
have
they
them
got the
run back
zoomies.
out, right?
Yeah, they definitely get the zoomies. They had that a little earlier.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh. Hey, Grace, what'd you think of that Japanese Grand Prix from Nippon?
So glad I got up early for that.
Yes.
Oh, my
What'd you think of
goodness.
that finish, the finish and not finding out until you're interviewing the third place guy, Grace?
I think first of all, at the beginning of the broadcast, the rain delay, right? They have Sky has this graphic of like the 6 ways that the points could work. You know, if it's a quarter of a race or half of a race, or we have this I was like, your rules are too complicated. It should literally be if you do half plus 1, you get full points.
Right.
Half minus 1, you don't. You get half
You
points.
don't have points.
Problem solved.
Done.
This didn't have to be so hard. What?
Right. I know.
And so yeah, that was terrible. I mean, I'm not the biggest Max Verstappen fan, but still, when you're just in there and you know you're being interviewed and you're like, I did what? Like that's not. I mean, because as was pointed out, like you missed the like radio transmission, you missed the like, woohoo, we did it, great job, you know, like all that stuff. And so it was weird and unnecessarily complicated. I mean, I think when you have Jonathan Wheatley, you know, they're like looking through the PDF, trying to figure out if they won or not.
I know.
You know, if Jonathan can't figure it out, who am I to figure it out, right? Like,
I know.
you know, so I don't know. It just seemed like the most FIA thing of the FIA to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I kind of felt bad. It was like, oh, yeah, Serge. Oh, wait a minute, Serge. We got to go back and talk to Max, you know?
Right.
Just won the championship.
Did
Did you like the big red chair?
I did. That was nice. He was just like, but even that, and then they show him, and he's just like, "Oh, that was weird." Yeah, like it would be a little weird to just be sitting there by yourself. Like, I mean,
that's what I did like about Max. Everybody's over there, you know, chatting and stuff, and they have me sat in a big red chair, staring at just these graphics, not even the race. And then he leans forward and he says, "Hey, I feel alone," you know. So he gets up and goes back in.
It's like, this is
okay,
weird.
good for him. You know, that was a little weird.
It was definitely weird.
Yeah, that was a little strange.
But,
but it reminds me of Monty Python, the comfy chair.
Yes. And I thought, oh, we should have one of those. I need one of those. That looks nice. You know.
Yeah.
So
that
maybe
was
he
nice.
gets to keep it. Maybe he gets to take it home with him.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
And Grace, you did get to see. I mean, you know, barring, of course, we both love that circuit, as does everyone.
Absolutely.
But you did get to see some awesome hats.
Oh, always. The outfits never disappoint. Never. And I like that people had, like, somebody had, I think it was a giant Max Verstappen. It might have been a Ricciardo. I don't remember. One of, like, the big cardboard fat head kind of idea.
Yeah.
And then they had wrapped it in plastic in and of itself because it was raining so much. I'm like, see, that's dedication.
Yeah.
I would have been using it as an umbrella, and by race day, it would have just been a soggy mess. And I would have been like, great. No, they were planned. They knew what to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to, you know, there was a guy there and he had, like, on the bill, he had like this whole Lego
yeah,
set,
panorama. Yeah, it was awesome. Like, I don't know what scene he was trying to
I don't
depict,
know.
but it was great. It
Yeah.
was amazing, and
Well, I keyed in on it because it was Ferrari, of course. But, I was sitting there looking at it. I thought, that's awesome. How long did that guy spend
amazing.
putting that hat together?
Yeah.
It'd probably take me all year to put that. It probably took him a fortnight just to, let the glue cure.
Right.
But
I don't know.
yeah, it's crazy. So anyway,
always
great
impressed.
fun.
Always.
Always impressed with the fans in Japan. They're wonderful.
Although I'm never impressed with 2 hours of conversation filler. So.
Yeah, that's never that fun. But
yeah. I was up at that point. It was like, well, I guess we're here now.
Right. Yeah, that wasn't too exciting, but yes, in the wee hours of the morning. But anyway, fun race.
It was,
Yeah. Once it got going, it was great fun.
Yeah, Suzuka's great. Keep it on the calendar. Never
Yep.
go away. We can have more races in Japan. That would be fine too. Whatever.
It's what we would consider a must-have.
Yeah, definitely.
Silverstone, or as my British friends call it, Silverstone.
Silverstone. Yeah.
Right? Monza, Spa, Monaco, as Paul would call it, Suzuka. Those are must-haves.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we talk about some news this week? Let's
Sure.
do. Shall we?
All right. Yeah, I guess
And
that's why we're here.
And it does not involve helmet markup.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
There you go.
I wish.
There's helmet for you.
Okay.
All right. So first up, let's talk about. I don't want to overreact on this, but you guys remember when Mario was chatting up Zach on the grid, and he said, "Well, I'd like to drive a modern F1 car," and Zach said, "Well, we can make that happen." Well, they did. They did make that happen this past week at Laguna Seca. Mario Andretti, what is he, 82? 82-year-old Mario Andretti. Kudos to Zach Brown and McLaren for making this happen. It was super cool. It's interesting. Perhaps McLaren will release the full story in a video and do a feature on it at some point, but there just wasn't a lot of main press coverage of it. And I don't exactly know why, at least not as of Sunday evening when I was like nothing in motorsport, autosport, BBC, Sky, ESPN, none of that. I just didn't find much. I found something over at USA Today, for crying out loud. They ran a piece on it, of all people, right? And so at 82 years old, Mario said that his bucket list is complete. Now that's saying something for a guy that's driven just about everything and done about everything.
Right.
And so he said his bucket list is complete. He said he wanted to drive a modern F1 car, and McLaren CEO Zach Brown made that happen. The event was hosted at Laguna Seca. He drove the MP4 28A model, or a V8 version, which happens to be on the track of his last IndyCar victory. Right. So that's really cool too, right?
That is nice, yeah.
Celebrating his last victory, doing it in a McLaren. Mario said, quote, "It's sweet, but obviously I left a lot on the table." He said it's all about getting the proper gearing, and some of the problem for me was the way my helmet was vis-a-vis my steering wheel. I couldn't see the numbers on my downshift. In some corners I got it right, and others I didn't. In general, though, it is what I expected. It's a sweet feeling as a driver, so satisfying. The car just does what it should do.
It makes it sound like when you're a little kid and you're riding on like a snowmobile or something like that, right? And your helmet, because it's clearly for an adult, and the adults feel that you should have a helmet on because you're a child, and that seems like a good thing to do, but it's not one that fits your head, and you really can't see anything, and it's just kind of like shaking around. So that's what I envision. That he's just sort of like, oh, because it doesn't really quite work for him. But
and if you see the pictures. And he's got that helmet in there, and the steering wheel's up here, and it just reminded me, that's like every 82-year-old driving on the road you see today. You see the big steering wheel and the hands and the head, and that's,
oh my gosh.
Poor Mario.
I know.
But he's, what a cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is pretty great that that Zach was able to pulled that together for him, and they got him out there.
Yeah, and this is a guy who comes from an era where the car didn't do hardly anything it should,
Right.
and he had to make it do what he wanted to do. And sometimes when drivers did that, it went over the limit and people died.
Right.
They just didn't hit the tire barrier. They died, right? And this is a guy that comes from that era. When you think of Jackie Stewart, same things, same rules apply. They'd lose 6, 7, 8 friends a year in that era. If that's, just unfathomable by today's reckoning. But I think it's terrific, and good on Zach for making that happen. He didn't have to do that. But it was good, for Mario to see him in the car, and honestly, the videos of him kind of getting, even before he ran, just kind of sitting in the car and understanding the steering wheel. I mean, he was like a kid in a candy shop. Some things never change.
No, I mean, of course not, right? Like
He gets out and says, "Yeah, I left too much on the table. I didn't get the gear shifts right." I mean, that's like a true racer,
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, 86-22. It doesn't matter, right?
Doesn't
He's
matter.
The same perspective.
Same thing. He got out, felt like he left too much on the table.
He was
He was
ready to go
already
again.
assessing the gear shifts.
Yeah.
What was wrong. For most of us, we get out and we'd say, "Wow, those brakes are really incredible." Not Mario. He gets out, he's talking about gear shifts, and he was late on some. It's just so Mario. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
That's cool. Hey, speaking of Mario, let's continue with that thread, shall we? Now most of you listening know that the U.S. Grand Prix is coming up this weekend in Austin at the Circuit of the Americas, or as we like to abbreviate it, COTA, C-O-T-A, or as Grace likes to say, the Circuit du América.
That's right. Like it's Catalunya.
Yes, right. So COTA has just announced today that they are calling the final turn. They're going to rename that. They're going to call the final turn at Circuit of the Americas. They're going to call it the Andretti turn.
All right.
How about that?
That's
Not
pretty good.
Andretti Corner, the Andretti. It's just known as the Andretti.
That's so you don't think it's ever about Michael. The Andretti is clearly Mario. If
Right.
you call it Andretti Corner, people might get confused. So we got to make sure we're clearly
Right.
talking about Mario here.
Yeah, because you can't say, well, that's the corner Marco Andretti. No, that's not Marco.
No.
It's the Andretti.
Right. Right.
Yeah, right.
Mario. That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah,
there.
so there's
yeah.
no confusion as to which Andretti that was named after. It would be the Andretti.
That's
yeah.
right. That's
So that's good. And they're the circuit celebrate. Can you believe it? It's the 10th Grand Prix.
I can't either. When I read that, I'm like, I know that like mentally that's correct, but
Yeah, I know.
seems like only yesterday we were walking around eating waffle
Doesn't it?
tacos.
I know. It seems like just yesterday, you and Paul and I were down there in that karting event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that?
I thought I was gonna die. Yeah, running through the infield. Yes, of course I remember that.
I know. And then we were doing the warm-up lap,
Oh my gosh.
but I didn't know it was the warm-up lap, and I come around the final turn, and everybody stopped on the grid, and I hit the brakes and spin into the grass, and then I get back on. I hope nobody saw that. Man, I hope nobody saw that. And I
That's right,
pull
we're
up
fine.
there, and then Paul's like just ahead of me, right, on the
Yeah.
other side, just ahead of me. And that checkered flag, I don't know who the heck was in that group with us, but that checkered flag came out, and Paul took off. I mean, I wasn't even in the same zip code
No, me
by the
neither.
time I crossed the finish line as Paul. He took off. I never saw him the rest of the entire race.
No, I was
Gone.
just trying to stay alive. We hadn't even been to the race yet. you
I know.
Like,
I know. And he was just gone.
gone. Yeah.
I don't even know how he did that. I had he's got a better weight to power ratio than I do. But, I had it floored the whole time. My slip angle, man, I'm sliding through all those corners and I'm going through and I got to catch up with Paul. Thinking, oh, hell no, I'm not catching up with Paul. There's no way.
He is a professional.
He is a professional, yeah.
What are my chances? None.
My gosh. And by the time I got across the finish line, I think he was over there smoking a Camel or something.
Oh yeah, man. He's like on his third
like-
beer by the time we got done, right? Like,
Todd? Never heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. I
That
don't know
guy?
anything about him.
Yeah. Oh, that guy that gets spun on the formation lap? No, I don't know that guy. I've never met that man in my life.
No.
That Paul.
Yeah.
Well, it was a bummer, Grace. I was supposed to go down this week, so Paul and his wife are in town, and I was supposed to go down and have dinner with Paul and his much, much better half, his wife.
Right.
Because when they do come in town, my wife and he and his wife, we like to go out and do what we call a Charsley dinner. Now, a Charsley dinner is we go out and we get seated around 6:30. And as hard as the waiters and waitresses try to get us served and out and move the tabletops,
You're there till midnight.
we're there until 11, right?
Yeah, right.
And so they'll come and say, okay, would you like the appetizer? Yeah, we'll start with a meat and cheese tray.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, and then what did you want for dinner? So we'll order that when we
That's
get
it.
there, you know,
Yeah.
we'll order that. And so, yeah, it's, but as it would turn out, Mrs. Camber comes down and has an emergency appendectomy.
Oh my
this week.
gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. It's like,
Wow.
are you kidding me? You know? And so we couldn't make it. I'm so bummed.
Yeah.
I'm so bummed. I mean, because, you know, if you can spend time with the Charsleys, I highly recommend it. It's a delightful evening. His wife is wonderful. And Paul is quite the conversationalist, and we have a great time, do he and I. And so Paul and Alexandra, our apologies from us. I'm so sorry to have missed that, but please hurry back to town, and we'll do it. And we'll do a makeup and get Mrs. Camber feeling better. So there you go, Grace. There's a little slice of my life.
Yeah. I assume your wife is doing. Did she have to have surgery? Is she okay?
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
full appendectomy, and in the hospital, and I had to go up, and thankfully it wasn't the open. It was
Like laparoscopic.
laparoscopic.
Where they just
yep.
go in and suck it right out.
Yep. So thankfully it
Okay.
was that, which is good, you know. And so anyway, and then she, hey, you want to see my scar?
Yeah.
No, no, not really. But yeah, okay, why not? So anyway, she.
You and I were
she's
clearly
good.
brought up by different parents. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to see your scar.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So anyway, she's got that going for her.
All right.
So a little slice from my life, and it is fall here. I've posted some pictures of my backyard and surrounding areas there. It's delightful out. It's her favorite time of the season. Is it your favorite, fall?
I like any season that isn't like 100 degrees and 99.9% humidity, which I'm pretty sure is like 8 months out of the year here in DC. So
Yeah.
no, I'm a big fan of fall, but it's really just about not being summer. Any season that's not summer, I'm happy with.
Yeah, well, we've had the last 2 weeks, almost 3, has just been every day glorious. Blue sky, fall colors, cool weather. It's just been
Yeah, it's been
absolutely
real
glorious.
Nice.
Yeah,
It's been real nice here,
it
too.
really has. So, but I'm a spring person. I like spring. So, but the fall has been glorious. Anyway, so I posted some of those on my socials. You can see the pictures. What else should we
You know,
talk
you're
about?
not, under the age of 30. You can just call them social.
Yeah, I'm a social man,
Whatever.
bruh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you should start calling Paul Bruh
Bruh.
from now on.
I got teenage daughters, you know, they keep me on. They're all trying to get me on this another social app called Be Real.
Oh, be real. Okay.
Have you seen that one?
No.
Oh yeah, it's all the Gen Z are on it, man.
I'll have to ask my nieces. They're the same.
Yeah,
age.
yeah. They'll get you on Be Real. If you get on Be Real, I'll get on Be Real, Grace, and then we can be real together. So that would be
And
be
that'll
funny.
that'll be the end of that social media trend, right? They'll have to move on to. Oh, the old people found us. We're gone.
It's like, oh crap, Todd and Grace got on Be Real. Let's find another one.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I'm pretty sure I know what your Be Reals would be. It'd just be a picture of you and a picture of a cat in your lap.
I mean, that's all really it is now.
I know.
Any of them. So
I know. So you got that going for you. What else is in the news? IndyCar invades Formula One. How about this, folks? So McLaren, do you sense a theme? I wrote this podcast for you, Grace,
I
the
appreciate
McLaren
it.
fan that you are. I'm bigging up Zach, which of course we're big fans, but you
Yeah.
got McLaren doing the thing with Mario. It's awesome. Mario Corner. Now we're heading over to IndyCar. So IndyCar driver Alex Palou will drive in FP1 for the U.S. Grand Prix, and Zach announced that Pato O'Ward will drive in FP1 for Abu Dhabi. So
Nice, very nice.
So two of his drivers, remember the big joke is like there's no drivers left because Zach hired them all.
He did.
Right?
He sure did.
Yeah, yeah. And it was dangling the carrot, right? So, having signed just about every driver out there, he has to find some role for them.
Yeah.
He's got to throw them a bone since he signed them and he was dangling the carrot of an F1 drive. So anyway, so they get to drive an FP1. I think that's great. So Alex is going to take Dan's car this weekend at the U.S. Grand Prix. Pato will take Lando's car in Abu Dhabi. And so that's all good. Now, I got to thinking about it. I thought, well, hey, if I was Dan, I'd be talking to Zach saying, hey, I don't really have a ride for next year in F1. I'm wondering if I could drive for Alex or drive Pato's car in IndyCar during a practice session, just get a feel for it and see if it's something I like, right?
Yeah, sure.
Why not? Tit for tat, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
I don't know because I'm pretty sure, he doesn't have a future with the team, so not quite the same.
Yeah, maybe.
He's the one.
Zach owes him nothing.
He's the one driver not signed by McLaren currently.
He is the one remaining driver on this planet that McLaren is not signed.
That is great. Him and Nico Hulkenberg. That's about it.
Yeah, because even Paul Charsley does work with McLaren from time to time.
That's right. See, they just buy him all, and then that's it.
See, even if Paul wanted to go drive somebody, Zach would say, Paul, check page 7, section 8, paragraph A.
It's like playing Monopoly, right? Every place you land on, he's got a hotel.
I know, he's got a hotel. You got to pay up,
Yeah. So.
Then you're just living to pass go and collect $200 in hopes that you can make it around the board to go again.
That's right.
It's terrible, man.
That's the game he's playing.
Yeah.
But he's got them all.
I know. So I know a lot of you out there are thinking, oh my gosh, are you serious? Max won the championship. What the hell are we going to watch now, right?
Okay, so first of all, he was going to win. I mean, I think that was the thing too, right? Like he's either going to win in Japan or he's going to win in Austin. Like it was just, that's part of the why it was weird. Although I do always miss the weird math things they do as we get towards the end of the season, Yeah, you remember you usually get a good 3 or 4 races of what they call all the permutations. Right? Oh, that's it. Those are my favorite. Because then there's always some permutation that's like this, and this, and this, and this, and this happens, and Bottas wins. There's always just some what? Some crazy bananas like Bottas and his bucket hat are not winning the championship. But I appreciate that somebody took this exercise all the way out to get Bottas in a championship.
I always wonder, I never asked our friend, Statman Sean. I never asked him. I always wonder if he was the one that crunched the numbers or if somebody else at the broadcast did the numbers.
It's my favorite. I love that.
Because Sean, he would know him. But those, you're right. And it got a little out of control. It would be like, okay, so if Sebastian finishes 6th or 5th only, then Weber can't finish greater than 8th. And at that point, A. Williams' car, doesn't matter which one, has to finish in 3rd.
Right.
It's like, what?
It becomes like those puzzles where, Bobby's this tall and Sally rode in on a train. Who likes horses, right? It becomes one of those puzzles that you're like, I don't know what they're called, but I assume people will know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it just was always great. And that they would update that throughout the race as if Bottas had a chance. They kind of did that with Perez, right? I guess Checo's not winning. Checo's never going to win it.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right.
But that would have been great filler for the 2-hour rain delay as well to talk about all this permutation.
It would have been. So it's like, well, if Max finishes 7th, if Checo wins the 4 remaining races and Latifi scores 9th or better at 2 of the last 4 races, then technically Max wouldn't win the title. It's just weird permutations like that.
Those are my favorite. So,
but they're fun.
I will miss that for the last couple races.
Yeah, I know.
But I'll put my plug in now. If you would like to watch some racing where the championship hasn't been decided, MotoGP is still way out there, and it's still easily a 3-person race. So
I knew you'd shoehorn a MotoGP plug in here.
I didn't even wait for you to mention Mick Doohan's son. I'm just shoehorning it in there. But if you're interested, I got 2 races left. There's 14 points, I think, between Bagnaia and Quartararo because Fabio keeps falling off his bike.
Let's just throw it down. Who's going to win? You're going with Quartararo, aren't you?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's been tough. I think he's fallen off the last 3 races. That's not good.
No.
Bagnaia also has some problems staying on the bike. So, I mean, I would love it for like well, and then I don't want Alicia Spargo to win it. So that's who I definitely don't want to win. I am not an Alicia fan, but I think it would be nice to see a Ducati. I would have preferred Jack Miller do it, but I'll give it to Bagnaia. We'll see that.
Okay.
I'll give it to a Ducati.
There you go. There it is. Write that on a rock. Grace said it.
We'll see in 2 more races if I'm right or not. But Fabio's got to pull it together. So
right.
You can watch that.
So, hey, if you're also wondering, well, what other battles can we watch? Seriously, there is a lot of battling going on in Formula One. Now, yes, Max has won the championship over Charles Leclerc, who is there, and Sergio Perez. Sergio and Perez and Charles still battling for P2 in the Drivers' Championship.
Yes.
So watch that closely. It's a tight field in 2022. And while Max has won the title, you'd be forgiven for not have noticed the real battle between 4th and 9th place. So right now, folks, there are 4 teams vying for 6th through 9th with, get this, Alfa Romeo on 52 points, Aston Martin on 45 points, and both AlphaTauri and Haas at 34 points, right? Not a lot to play for between 6th all the way down to 9th. So imagine that prize money delta between 9th and 6th, folks, is massive. So you can imagine how hard these teams are working. And yet, on the flip side of it, they can't really afford to bring massive development parts to their car for the last 4 races, as they're either focused on next year's development of the car for next year, or maybe they're at their cost cap limit, right? So this is intriguing.
That stops people.
See what you did there.
All right, I'm sorry. I interrupted the story.
There is the battle for best of the rest. This is 4th, right? With Alpine and McLaren. They're going head to head. There's only 13 points between them,
which they've been doing all season. And as a McLaren fan, of course, this is not lost on me, but I think they've been neck and neck all season. And Alpine, I mean, McLaren has been a more like steady medium, whereas Alpine tends to be a little more like up and down. And so I think that's what, they're not both just like kind of medium straight lines. I think they've both had some up and downs, and Alpine's always a little and you never know with Alpine. They're never fully fit.
It's tough to know. McLaren came out last week and said that it's going to be very difficult to beat Alpine. And I suspect much of that has to do with the cost cap or the development for the final races that McLaren wants to bring to that. So at this point, every team would be doing some sort of cost-benefit analysis on what it would take to cure some of their known performance deficits, and could spending more money on that be offset by the potential prize money you may gain by finishing 6th or 5th or 4th, right? And then also, or have they already spent their maximum for 2022? There's a lot of things at play here between 4th all the way down. And by the way, Ferrari needs to kind of watch out, because Mercedes isn't that far back, but, well, they are a little bit. But anyway, you get my point. But to get an idea of how they calculated that cost-benefit analysis and their chances, look for any of these teams, 4th through 9th, and see what they bring as far as development parts, any upgrades they might be bringing over the remaining 4 races, and you'll get an idea of what decisions they've made. If you see Haas bring a couple development pieces for this weekend or the next couple of races, then they're trying to get out of 9th place. They're trying to get to 8th, 7th, something, right? Same for AlphaTauri and Alfa Romeo, right? So keep your eye. That'll tell you if one or two of them is really going to try to make a jump. I suspect Alpine and McLaren will.
Yes,
they're going for it. Yeah,
And
I would expect
they have the ability to go for it.
they have the ability. Yeah, that's right. So that's interesting. And then I was reading something about this. Haas's Gunther Steiner, who we affectionately refer to around here as just Steiner. You know, he's on
the Steiner.
the Steiner.
That'll be his corner.
Yeah, like the Steiner,
Andretti. Yes,
the Andretti.
Right.
Steiner is on a one-name basis. He's kind of like Madonna in that sense. He's just one name, Steiner.
Yeah.
So Steiner said this about the situation, quote, I just think the strong teams, they are reliable now. The top 4 teams, they're executing very good. And then it's the other 6 teams which fight about 9th and 10th, to be honest. And what it looks like at the moment. So what do I put this down to? I don't know. It's just competition. They did a better job. There's nothing hidden in there. What you can take away, I think, the budget cap works because the teams are as close together as they ever were. The 6 teams behind the 4 teams, they're very close. Anybody could score at any moment, and or the 2 and the 1 point. Obviously, if anyone drops out, then you move up a little bit more, but it shows that everything works. I think in a few years it will close up even more, and then everyone will be mixing up more. And, you know, I don't, is he right? Will it close up even more as the system sort of continues to squeeze the wallet of these teams and sort of gets tweaked? I think coming out of this year with the certification drama and all that, I think the system, the regulations will be tweaked a little bit more. This is only the really second year into these regulations, so
I don't know if it's gonna ever. You know, it's never gonna squeeze Ferrari and Haas together, perhaps, but it is. I think, as Gunther's saying, right, it's going to squeeze Alpha and Haas together, and it's going to squeeze Alpine and McLaren together, and it's going to, you know, and so you might have some teams that move between those 3 groups, but, you know, it's really just going to squeeze those 3 groups together, and, you know, and you'll have some movement. And I think that's the best you're ever going to get out of Formula One, unless you start really making it specky, which I don't think any of us want.
No,
that's how it's going to live, you know.
Yeah, I think it is going to be difficult. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's always going to be difficult because regardless of the cost cap, I need to be polite. How I say this? How am I going to say this?
Well, I can't wait till after the show.
Well, I mean, look, because you're a big team and a manufacturer's team, and previously you had big budgets, etc., you have lured some of the top minds of the sport.
Right.
And that's hard to battle with, you know, regardless of what your budget is. Trying to lure Adrian Newey down to Williams to design their car, Adrian's probably not that interested in it. You know?
I mean, it's just like we talk about with Ricciardo, right? I think the drivers are very, you know, out front to us, right? So we always talk about the drivers. So, you know, Haas has a seat, not anymore, I guess. But anyway, since they signed Nico Hulkenberg, they're gonna sign Nico Hulkenberg. But anyway,
maybe not.
Who knows? Whatever. Keep the intrigue growing. We still have races. I need something
rolling
to talk about, man. We still got shows to fill. So, but anyway, you know, we talk about, you know, Ricciardo, and we're like, oh, here's a seat here and here's a seat here. And I could see why Haas would want Ricciardo, but does Ricciardo want to go to Haas? Right. Like, those are two very different things. He might want to go to Alpine. That's not right. Do you really want to go to Alpha? You know, I mean, that's a very different stuff.
Different thing.
It's the same for all the other people who work at these teams, right?
Yes.
Even though they're not, you know, we know, like I was saying, we know the Jonathan Wheatleys, we know the Adrian Neweys, we know the Toto Wolffs, but there's how many people on a team that
bunch.
You know, whose names I've only learned from playing F1 Manager. I didn't know who these people were, but now we're trying to get them to, you know, roll on my team. So now I know who they are, but which is a whole nother interesting thing. But I think that, you know, all of those people, and I remember Steve Matchett always talked about that. Like, not only did you have the drivers start out Minardi or Toro Rosso or something like that, so that they kind of got some seat time before they moved up to a big team. It's the same thing with the mechanics. It's the same thing with the engineers. It's the same thing with everybody else. You start out at one of those lower teams to kind of like get your seat time, and then you move up to Ferrari or up to McLaren. And
what you're seeing at Red Bull poaching Mercedes technical minds, that is top teams poaching each other and taking intellectual property with them, which Flavio Briatore often said.
It's the Flavio Briatore model.
Right. So that's what's happening at the top.
Yeah.
But what you see down the grid is trying to hire the best people you can. But this is where a lot of these young mechanics, young engineers, cut their teeth.
Right.
They've come up. It's not like they just got out of middle school and they gave them a pencil and a calculator. I mean, these people came up through, if you're an aerodynamicist or an engineer, you've probably worked in Formula 2, F3, whatever, different racing series. And so you've worked your way into Formula 1.
And it's still the top talent. Again, just like we talked about the drivers, right? Like these are the 20 best drivers, relatively speaking, right? It's the same thing. Like it's still the upper echelon of mechanics or engineers or any of these other positions, right?
Right.
But once you get into that upper echelon, they're still in groups and out groups among that echelon.
Right. And part of that is so the front right wheel mechanic for Max Verstappen, does he want to go down to Haas?
No, right.
No, he probably enjoys the amenities at Red Bull, I'm sure.
They have the best catering.
Yeah, apparently so, according to the memes. So anyway, yeah, that's I think that's an important thing. But I do think, though, when you get to those teams, you're right. The top 3, 4 get compressed. The midfield will be compressed, and then the back markers will start to be compressed. Yeah. The big question is, can the back markers pull the midfield in where it's the top 4 and the rest of the field? Not necessarily the midfield. There's always going to be people in the back, but what delta's between them and midfield?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. What I think is more likely is that you'll still have those 3, but you'll have more movement on the edge. Right?
Yeah, right.
So you'll have movement between the top 3 and number 4 to swing in and out of the top 3, top 4. And you'll have more with the back 4. You'll have somebody that'll be able to swing back and forth between those 2. I don't know that you're ever... That's what I mean. Like at some point, it loses its F1-ness if it becomes too close, right? I think then there are plenty of spec series out there that are perfectly fine. I guess I've always argued that, in a world where both Corona and Guinness can live together and are both beer, everything doesn't have to be Guinness, right? Like, so it's okay. We can have speckier series and we can have less specky series, but we still want competition and good racing. So to me, that's the goal.
Right. So anyway, there's a good battle going on still for the balance of the season. So there's a lot to watch F1 for sure. I'm very intrigued at that McLaren Alpine battle. I think.
That's
going to be really interesting.
And I love that they interview Andreas Seidel more and more. Like because he has such a dry delivery that when when he has some insight or joy or something, it's always great.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
well, we were talking about, does the whole financial part of this work? And I got to thinking about that over the weekend. Is the cost cap, the prize money, does either of that help teams make money? How does that work? And so I thought for a recap, and this is a 30,000-foot view of this system. Trust me, the details behind what I'm getting ready to tell you are great. All right. When we talk about prize money, there's columns involved, and the columns are based upon where you finished in a year in the Constructors' Championship, and how much you make depends on where you finished the following year in the Constructors' Championship, and that pays more if it's still within the top 10. There's all these different permutations, if you will, on how you get the money. But so I want to try to make this easy. So if you consider that F1 has about 70 million plus or minus 70 million viewers per race. Okay. Imagine that. Just for a moment, stop and think about that. Not per season, per race.
Right.
70 million people, right? So when people talk to you about other forms of sport, like, other forms of racing or whatever, just keep in mind when you're talking about Formula 1, there are 70 million sets of eyeballs on each race. That's massive. The series nets over $2 billion. All right? So it's in that range. Now, that's the pot that all the teams are trying to live off of, as if and the series itself is trying to live off of it. The teams are trying to live off it. And the FIA wants their cut, right, too. So this is the pot that everyone's trying to live off. The higher a team places in the Constructors' Championship, the more prize money they get. Of the $2 billion or so that F1 makes, half of that goes into a prize fund. And then around 23, 24, 22, 21, somewhere in that range, call it 22, 23% of that is shared among the teams. And another 22, 23, a little over 23% is given to the teams depending on where they finish in the championship.
Right.
So $2 billion, half of that, $1 billion, is thrown in the pot. 23% of that is spread across the teams. The other 23% of that is paid to the teams depending on where they fall in this column prize fund that I was talking about. So the top teams can earn around $150 million, while the smaller teams can range around $60 million or so in prize money. So you can see where the cost cap idea is considered a good thing, because if all the team can spend is 140, then even Williams at the back of the grid gets 60 million in offset. Right. And as the sport is bringing in billions of dollars of sponsorship, one would like to think that they're going to be made whole, right? At least break even.
Right.
And the thought is that all 10 teams should be able to compete and not be out of cash, right?
Right.
At least break even, especially when F1 foots the bill for the $8 or $9 million in freight fees that all the teams incur flying the circus around the world. Right. So that's a generic example of how this sort of works. If you consider that an F1 car is around, $10, $12 million to make per car, then you crash and damage the chassis, it's a major cost. And you can see why team bosses aren't happy with stunts like Schumacher's crash in Japan, where they had to switch a chassis. That's incredibly expensive. Yeah. Even today, Gene Haas came out in the press today and was pretty critical of Schumacher and said the guy's costing us a lot of money. We can't afford it.
I was going to say, just wait. If you want to know how much things cost, just wait until somebody runs into Max Verstappen, and Christian Horner will tell us.
Yes, he will tell you.
And his whinging, we'll know exactly how much those parts cost.
His whinging. Oh, but he won't throw a headset.
No, that's totally...
Today, it was one of the tabloid rags or something said that Christian was saying that throwing headsets around the garage and pointing and stuff and managing out of fear is not a good look.
Oh, boy.
That's funny. Anyway, so I hope that helps you give you an idea of kind of how that plays out. And, Grace and I have talked about this in the past, that when the tobacco money left and sponsorship and all that kind of bled out of the series, then all the teams signed on to this sort of thing, and they've all been living basically off that prize money for several years, except the top teams. But they've all kind of been living off of it. They didn't have to go out and find a bunch of sponsorship. Now, the upside of that is sponsorship because of Drive Survive and all the new fans. The sponsorship's coming back, right? Formula One, which is great for the teams, even midfield and smaller teams. So that means that there's going to be more prize money in the pot. So let's say in 2020 or 2021, they did $2 billion. One would think the growth has gone even more.
Right.
So it'd be more than that.
Yes.
Right. So half of that will go in the prize money, 23%, 23%, so yeah. So anyway, that's kind of how that works. Hopefully that helps you guys. And it does kind of get us into the cost cap certification discussion that happened this past week. So the online vitriol is out of control, and I'm not really even going to entertain a bunch of it, nor should F1, Red Bull, or the FIA, to be honest with you at this point. But the memes, as Grace pointed out, were hilarious.
I mean, to me, we talked about this last time I was on, that's the joy of sports. If I can't get on and go, how was that Chiefs game yesterday, Todd? What fun is sports, right? Some part of it is always kind of, and social media is just ripe for that. Of course I'm going to say, I didn't, but people were very creative about, well, what did Red Bull spend the cost on? And catering just kept coming up, and all these jokes about well, no wonder why. And then they'd show some clip of Max cut in eating some, giant banquet or something like that. You know
right.
what I mean? People were great. It was in good fun. Of course, there's always people I feel that I can do far, but then I'm just like, we'll just block you. I'm just here for some funny jokes, I've always felt that way. To me, social media is where I go like, look how cute your cat is. Look how much fun your kids are. And look how funny I am. That's it. I feel there's no really other use for it. But and I also feel don't let facts get in the way of things. People often will do that too. Like they'll be like, well, Grace is like, I know, but where's the fun in that? Isn't part of this to be just, I can just pretend that that's what happened, whether that's what happened or not. It's fine.
Right.
Let the facts ruin my fun.
I know, but I don't know. Some of the online hate's been out of control. I
think there's a difference, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, of course, I mean, it's much like the threats and racial, there's no space for that. No. Vitriol in that sense, there's no space for. But yeah, there's some space for, boy, them Chiefs, they were great.
Oh, that was bad.
And twice.
It's picked in a scab. That was terrible. And it wasn't even against your team, the Steelers, who won.
The Steelers won, so it was like, go ahead. We'll win no other game this season, so it's fine. But,
Yeah, that was brutal. So, but, the fact of the situation is we know very little detail about what the non-certification Red Bull's cost cap submission, other than they had a minor overspend and a procedural thing. Now, McLaren's Zach Brown. Now, I said this a couple weeks ago or a week ago. I have major issue with the fact that it was leaked either to the press or Toto or to other team members, and then Toto just happened to be the one that was vocal and in the media talking about Red Bull and Aston Martin not being certified and overspending. I have major issues about that, and I wrote about that in a piece at the website, because that is a huge issue. That if people in the FIA or somewhere is leaking this information, Toto's former personal lawyer or whoever, right? Which was the allegation, I think, that Red Bull fans made. So the point of this is now, this week, today, and McLaren's Zach Brown had a letter to the FIA president that he sent to the FIA president about this cost cap issue that was leaked. And this is yet another issue on top of the leaked results of the certification that I have massive concern about. Way more concern than I do Red Bull's overspending by $1 million or $2 million. Sure. If you can't manage the process
then
without
there's no
leaking,
process.
no, just stop the cost cap, because this is going to destroy Formula One if you keep leaking information about this. Now, some people say, well, maybe McLaren leaked it themselves just to get out of there. Maybe so. And if that's proven, if that's the result, that's pathetic, because this will ruin the sport. Yeah, just say it out loud in the press, whatever.
Right.
Don't leak it. How Toto Wolff found out that Red Bull and Aston Martin weren't certified, that needs to be stringently figured out. Who leaked it? That needs to be figured out. If the FI can't do that, if they can't get their damned house in the order, you can't regulate a cost cap. And I would argue, I'm not even sure you're fit for purpose of regulating the sport if you're going to be a sieve and constantly leak critical information. You cannot do that. If I was Toto Wolff, I don't want to hear that, because if they're leaking that crap to him, what are they leaking about you to them?
Bingo. Right.
So you cannot have that.
It's no different than the office gossip, right?
No. Yeah, it's exactly right.
If that's what Paul's telling me about you, what is Paul telling you about me?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You cannot have a governing body that leaks like that. It's bad enough for, a government leaking all this stuff. But when you're in a sport like this, that's a critical element. And especially around this sensitive a topic, because these are all private companies with private accounts. You can't do that.
Money is what is most proprietary, right? Like
Yes.
we often talk about, technical manuals and, that kind of stuff. But I think that in the world of contracting, how much things cost is often the most proprietary information that you have access to in contracting. Not, we do this thing by doing this thing. We 3D print our wings. Like that's not
Right.
necessarily proprietary as how much you spent to 3D print your wing. So
Yeah,
I
you
think
could
that's where this is much more sensitive in a sense
exactly.
than the technical stuff.
Yeah, you could, Grace, if you were at a team and I was given information and I could look at what you're spending. Why are they buying so much of this composite material? Mm-hmm. Why are they buying that much?
What are they
It
doing?
doesn't
over
take
there?
that much. What are they doing with that? What would they be doing with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can start, I can't tell you how galactically bad this is. I mean, putting aside Red Bull's overspend or not worried about that. This is what I'm worried about because this is a major, major issue. And I say that in defense of Mercedes, Ferrari, AlphaTauri, anyone who is signatory to this cost cap regulation, because if you don't have 100% trust, then you don't. And the system falls down on itself. So I got major issues about a letter that Zach sent to the president. He was basically advocating for a very stiff penalty against Red Bull, and that was leaked. That's BS. That's BS. So I'm furious about that because this betrays everything about Formula One. The other thing, go ahead.
And just how you run shit, right?
Yes.
Like, I just think this is, any company, whatever you're doing, even if like me and Paul ran a company, you would want the same, stringentness, especially around how much you spend on stuff as you do if you're Ferrari or Formula One. So,
right.
No,
and you think about it in daily business. I work for a global company, and they take all of these kind of things. Integrity is really serious to them, and people can say, "Well, yeah, I got your competitor's price list. I really don't want to see it. Don't send it to me, and I don't want to see it. I don't want it. Don't send it. I don't want it. That's not right." And
it isn't. I agree. I agree
and
with that.
And it's part of their ethical code of conduct, and we don't do that. It's nothing we engage in. We don't want to see that. But I saw some people posting a video of Ross Brawn, and they were really auguring in on this one. And it had Ross Brawn, a quote from 2019 when he was saying, he was talking about fraudulent spending, and the key word here, folks, was fraudulent. You missed that point. They were saying, see, Ross Brawn says right here that they should be kicked out of the championship. No, what he said was fraudulent activity and overspending, meaning deceitful, hiding it, fraudulent would be severely dealt with. But a paragraph before that, he says there would be varying levels of penalties. All right, so don't cherry pick this crap. Throw it out there to try to make your point. Because, I have Google too, and I can go and read the damned article, and that's what it says. The point is, and I read just today, and I don't know if this is true or not, but what I said on the podcast is we don't know the details, and we don't know what the overspend was on. But I read today, someone said, oh, well, we found out that it may have something to do with Adrian Newey's salary, which the FIA included the total salary in there, putting them over when Red Bull is actually subcontracting Adrian's company. It's his own company, and they're subcontracting his services. And you could see, well, then that would be a difference of opinion on classification.
But the idea of a company having a sub is not like rocket science, again, in the world of contracting. So certainly the accountants at the FIA said, what about this? Right? Like, I saw that too. And that is an interesting thing. I had not thought of the fact that somebody, because it's what your top 3 employees don't count on the on the wall side.
Right.
And so maybe Adrian Newey is a subcontractor, but somebody thought of that. That's like,
Well, and it could have been in the defense of the FIA. It could have been said, look, yeah, I know. Maybe he's got a separate LLC or a letterhead that you're subcontracting, and he's had that since he started working on the Valkyrie or the boat, whatever. Yeah. That's fine. But the reality of it is we show that, and asked him or whatever, show that he spent 80% of his time working on your Formula One car. And to us, that's an employee. And maybe that's why they include it. I don't know.
I just don't think that's something that nobody thought of.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? I get it. We're speculating, and that it is a very interesting angle that I had not considered of who gets counted as your top 3.
Right.
But again, I guess I always think of like when we talked about the halo. I don't have the data to know if the halo is going to save a life or not. Even if I did, I'm not sure I know how to interpret it. But somebody does, right? Like, so it's the same thing. I'm not an accountant. I do contracting, but I don't do that kind. And so I'm sure there are things I wouldn't catch or I don't know. But somebody there does, or they should never approach this, adventure. Just like, there are engineers that know things. I don't know how to do those things, but they sure as hell better have somebody that knows how to do these things.
And when I read that today, I got to thinking back. Do you guys remember at the end of the Japanese Grand Prix when they were interviewing Christian Horner, and someone said something about, I don't know if it was Ted, somebody asked him about the amazing work another Adrian Newey car, the most dominant Adrian Newey car. Do you remember Christian's comment? His comment was, well, yeah, but, there's all the, the aerodynamicist is so-and-so, and so-and-so. That's the team that does all this. But Adrian, that's a key point. Go back and listen to that.
And Adrian Newey said the same thing because Ted kind of like drug that around the pit lane to everybody. So
right. And he was kind of like, well, yeah, no.
It's not just me.
So Red Bull may have said before any of this was brought up, but they may have said, well, no, technically they're the aerodynamicists of the car, him and that team. Adrian is more of a consultant in an ethereal role and oversight, and we pick his brain, but that's the actual team. Now, you may agree, you may disagree with that, but keep in mind, if in Red Bull's mind, that is the aerodynamicist, and that's the aerodynamicist team. Adrian Newey has his own company, and yes, he's a consultant for us, but he's not in the top 3. That guy's salary should have been in our top 3, not Adrian, right? That could be a classification issue. I don't know. It's all speculation. And I think that's the point. The point is that we just don't have enough details to make any real educated decision about this, and therefore start ascribing what we think the desired penalties or outcomes of the infraction. And I think it would do everyone well to calm down. Of course, keep in mind, if you're a Red Bull Max Verstappen fan, of course, keep in mind, of course, Toto and Mattia and others like Zach Brown and every team boss versus Franz Tost, all of them are going to be spinning this for everything it's worth because they got beaten by Red Bull.
Yes.
If Red Bull were in second or third or fourth in the championship and Mercedes or Ferrari would have won the championship and then were decertified and overspent, Red Bull would be right in there with the rest of them doing the same damn thing, saying the same thing, making memes about catering, and they would be, very much calling for stiff penalties.
But I love... Oh, good.
Well, there's just no doubt. And so that's what I'm saying. Everybody needs to take a deep breath, calm down. Let's see what the outcome is. Keep in mind, there is also an entire adjudication process for these disagreements. So if Red Bull strongly disagrees with the FIA finding, they can take it to adjudication. That could take some time to resolve. So everybody be patient. Let's see what comes out of it. Then we can get mad as hell.
Oh, I refuse to let your facts get in the way of my fun. So, I think there's some, I remember when we talked about some preseason comment that Mike Crack made about how great the team is. What was he supposed to say? Well, the team kind of is middling and they suck, but here I am and I'm going to do the best I can with these people and I can't win a championship. Well, you can't say that. So in some ways, right, like, people want to take the coach speak and run with it. And I think there's some fun to it. Some people, yes, do take it too far and too serious. But of course, I think, let's talk about what it might be. Why? I don't want to wait 12 months for them to tell me what the real answer is when I could be having the fun of speculating about how much Adrian Newey's paid and whether or not he's one of the top 3 or not. That's part of the fun.
Right.
I also, so I think there's that. And I do love all the catering memes. But I also think that the whole reason it got leaked, I got to pull, because when I read the article about Zach Brown, he said the FIA has run an extremely thorough, collaborative, and open process. I think the FIA leaked it because that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said about them.
Yeah, it is. I would say a little too open, if you know what I mean. Hint, hint, nod, nod.
Maybe, but he did not say that they were consistent, which I think would be even too far for a flattering letter to the FIA,
Well,
right?
I appreciate that Zach was giving them some ideas of what they could do to punish him.
I was gonna say, but that is what I always love. I love the FI or the Formula One tactic of. So I'm just asking for a friend, but if I did this, what might happen? You know, I love that that's the sort of the dynamic between the teams and the FIA all the time. Like,
right.
I'm not saying we're doing this. I'm just saying we might, and that we think somebody else is doing it. So what would the penalty be by chance?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I thought. Well, and Zach even said, we kind of think these should be the penalties.
Yeah, we're just
it's so good.
spitballing some suggestions.
Yeah, we're just spitballing there.
Take them what you want.
I mean, obviously they overspent, so let's just talk about some possible penalties. Here's some we're thinking of.
Right. We think this
I thought that was
fair.
great.
I love it. And then, because the thing is, too, is this isn't going to go away. So what'll be, not to McLaren because they're my team, but if it was Ferrari, I'd be all for the fact that this would come full circle and these rules would have to be applied to them, right?
Yeah.
So I think you always have to watch for that, too. But I do love that sort of like political word gamesmanship of, I'm not cheating, but if I did...
Yeah, I know.
Hypothetically speaking, what might happen? Or,
right.
well, here's some ideas. We were just, throwing around at the office if you'd like to borrow those. So, I think that stuff keep on going. I do think,
it's good.
I do think some people took it, way to heart. But I think that's always going to be what happens with Red Bull. But I also think we did not talk enough about Aston Martin. I think that they are the much more interesting case, but they're not Red Bull, so nobody's talking about what their shenanigans
And Williams,
might
right?
be.
So they said that Red Bull or Williams and
Williams.
Aston Martin had procedural infractions, not
Yes.
overspend.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
wonder what
interested
those
in
were.
What those are. Yeah. I think that's the much more interesting.
Because I'll tell you right now,
going on there.
it could have been that Lawrence got up, stuck his hand in his pants, and adjusted his junk in front of the FIA auditor.
Somebody just found out what team he's at. I don't know. And Williams, Yas Capito, what are you doing down there?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So
what's going on down there, goofball?
I think I'd like to know what those two teams,
I would too.
what their procedural issues have been. That I think is more interesting to me than Red Bull's overspend. Except that it's Red Bull, and so then I'd like them to, fall off the planet. But other than
you're
that,
in your haterade for Red Bull.
hey, it's fine. But
The more everybody hates Red Bull, the more I'm going to be forced to like them just to defend them.
you don't have to. You can just be neutral. You don't have to like them. You don't have to defend them. But I think that I've been consistent on that, so I'm okay with it. But I think again, all joking aside, I think of the three teams, I'm more interested in what those procedural infractions are than
those
the
would be
monetary
interesting.
overspend.
And as I said, the leaks are what I'm most concerned about. But anyway, so this weekend we got the U.S. Grand Prix coming up at COTA. Pirelli released this just a nice little a meter rating 1 through 5, 5 being the max, 1 being the minimum. As a traction circuit, 4 out of 5, so a lot of traction here. Braking's a 3 out of 5, so in the middle, not a super hard braking. A lot of lateral, 4 out of 5, a lot of lateral load. That means 4 out of 5, a lot of tire stress. So a lot of stress going through the tire. The asphalt grip, a 3, kind of in the middle. Asphalt abrasion, a 4. They resurfaced this in 2020, and I think last year they shaved it and did some milling to get some of the bigger bumps out. So because of that, the abrasion is up, and also because of that, 4 out of 5, the track evolution, they're expecting that track to evolve quite a bit from Friday through Sunday. So look for that track evolution, and 4 out of 5, it's a high downforce circuit. So there you go. Just a nice little graphic from Pirelli. Thank you, folks.
There you go.
All right, let's do some Albon's Cats. Yes, Grace, it's time for Albon's Cats. What do you got for us?
So first of all, I have a fun fact for you. It's been a while since I've shared a random fun fact. This one is actually cat related, so then all the more reason I think it should be in Albon's Cats.
Yeah.
So I recently learned, you know how they say like cat's whiskers are as wide as a cat, and that's how they know not to get like stuck in doorways?
Right.
Well, they don't grow the actual length of a cat, they grow to a certain point. So if you have we'll say a big boned cat, his whiskers are going to be too short for his body and he'll get stuck. Because, does that make sense? Like, they don't grow continually as the cat gets fatter. They just grow, all cats' whiskers grow to a certain length, which is kind of the average size of a cat. So Garfield's going to get stuck in that dog door because his whiskers aren't going to be wide enough.
I think this is like the human equivalent of saying, okay, so my jeans that I buy, they come in 32s. Now, I may get bigger than a 32, but I shouldn't because that's the jeans. That's as big as you should get. So the whiskers grow out to the idea size that your cat should be, but because your cat is a healthy eater, he's bigger than his whiskers. He just doesn't know that.
That is correct. Yeah. So I just thought that was really interesting that they don't actually grow to their size. They only grow to a specific size, and then your cat shouldn't get any bigger than that size.
That's funny.
So there you go. Random cat fact for the day. I did also want to share. So I know that a couple weeks ago when I was on, I talked about FIA Manager. Look at that, F1 Manager, which, as someone noted in our comments, like, yeah, that game will totally suck your. That is. Yeah. I'm fascinated by it, and plus it is the ideal way to watch a race, in my opinion, too, because you can just sort of like speed it up and watch them on the map, and it's like, oh, okay, it's time for pit stops. Let's slow it down again. And then you can just speed it up again and then slow it back down again. I'm like, this would be the ideal to watch a race, that you can kind of watch it at like double speed until you need to do something. But I just wanted to share this story of Flip's F1 Manager experience. So he was playing as Ferrari. He's managing Ferrari as Filippo Modelli, which I thought was a great, because he just tries to come up with the most Italian name possible to be their manager. And so he's playing as Ferrari.
It should have been Maurizio Arriva Bene.
Well, I kept trying to just convince him to be Franco Morbidelli. Like, just make my life easier, right? Like, just be Franco Morbidelli. It'll be fine. And so anyway, so he's playing as Ferrari, and because you go through the races pretty quick. Like, each race takes like 20 minutes or something, so you can get through a whole season, pretty quick. And I come back, and he's now playing as Mercedes, and I'm like, well, what happened to Ferrari? He explains this to me, and I'm like, this is the most Ferrari thing that has ever happened to Ferrari. So at the end of the game, you have to have $20 million left over to pay for your engines. So you can't play as Ferrari anymore because you don't have enough money to pay yourself for your engines. So he won the championship as Ferrari, but couldn't continue because he didn't have enough money to pay himself.
Oh, I hope he protested and did not go to the F1 prize giving gala.
I'm just saying that's like the most Ferrari thing I've ever heard of. Like,
that's pretty funny.
I'm out of the sport. Why? I can't pay myself.
Can't pay myself. Yeah.
They're your engines.
That's about right.
You're not. Yeah. You're not even Haas, right? Like, no, you make them. Give yourself a discount. So, lesson learned, if you haven't played a full season at this point, make sure you have $2 million left over so you can pay your engine supplier, even if it's yourself.
Yeah, that's about right.
It's a shit box.
Exactly.
I agree.
Don't be Ferrari. Don't win a championship and then have to leave the sport.
Right. That's funny. Good story. Oh boy. So for my Todd's No Shit headlines, okay. So for a separate, unrelated project, I was going back and I was looking up headlines after the second World Championship was won, for like, what were the general F1 headlines after Senna won his second title, after Schumacher won his second title, after Lewis won his second, or Seb won his second, or in this case, Max. So I was going back and I was looking at these headlines. But while I was doing that, well, by the way, boy, that's pretty amazing if you read all the headlines. It's kind of like Senna is pretty awesome, and then Schumacher is kind of like, and then Lewis is like freaking awesome. And then it gets to sub, it's kind of like, damn Germans, and it's just a Max, cheater, and all that. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so I was reading.
Big red chair.
Yeah, his big red chair. Yeah, it's such a cheater. So anyway, so there's hilarious headlines that I found that came out of that. So I wanted to share a few of them. So these are some from back in 2009. Okay. So from the BBC. Lewis may be bad for F1 because he may be too good.
I hate it when that happens. It's such a problem. Gosh.
yeah.
I'm just so good at my job, right?
Lewis, thanks for applying for this job. Could you tell us maybe what one of your weaknesses are?
Right.
I'm just too good.
I don't have any. Yeah.
No.
I'm just too loyal. I like to stay really late and come in really early in the morning.
I'm a workaholic. I think that's one of my weaknesses. Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. From the Sun, quote, Lewis, who lost F1 title, then who may have won it on a technicality, loses it when stewards decide other teams didn't cheat. Dun, dun, dun. It's like, what the hell? What was there a dangling participle in that phrase? What the hell's going on there?
5 random clauses tied together with no semicolons.
What editor looked at it and said, yep, good to go?
Yeah, I don't know.
Lewis, who lost F1 title, then who may won it on a technicality, loses it when stewards decide other teams didn't cheat. That's just like a word salad.
I watched in 2009. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Right? Like, what are we talking about here, people?
I don't know what. Now, this is a really good one. This is salty. Children, close your ears. This one from the Mail. Quote, Lewis. Yeah. Quote, Lewis wins Hungarian Grand Prix, goes back to hotel to boink Nicole Scherzinger. Can't hear you over the sound of how awesome he is.
Well, man.
Oh, my.
Well,
wow.
He is awesome. There's no stopping him.
No, angel babies. Angel babies.
Let's never talk about the angel babies again.
Oh, boy, I thought that was good. So, okay, then I thought, okay, well, that's pretty. So then I got on this whole girlfriend thing. So just this past week, this headline, quote, Max Verstappen's stunning girlfriend, Kelly Piquet, strips naked for sexy photo shoot after Red Bull star's F1 triumph. It's like, what?
Is that also from the Mail?
No, I don't remember who that was from. I don't think it was. But it was like a link to her Instagram page, and it was a black and white, and it wasn't like a nudie photo. It was sort of a, quote, artistic. You couldn't see anything anyway. But anyway, it was, I don't know. Anyway, I just thought it was pretty funny. The headlines are hilarious. It's one of my favorite parts of F1 is trying to read the ridiculous headlines. They're hysterical.
Lost the title, then won it on a technicality.
Then lost it because the stewards decided the teams didn't cheat. Yep. So there you go.
Dear Timo Glock.
Yeah, dear Timo Glock. Exactly. All right, let's do some mailbag.
Got mail.
Okay.
All right. Brad asked, Todd, Paul, Grace. Sorry, Paul's not on here, Brad. As discussion of penalties and overspending are going on, my thought is that the offending party should pay the amount they overspent to each team and every team. And those dollars do not go against the spending limit. What do you think? Well, it's not bad. If Red Bull were found to have spent $2 million more, you would advocate that they spend not 20 million, 18 million, and they would pay every team $2 million. I think if I'm reading your comment right.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, so every team would get $2 million, and that's a freebie. Yeah, that'd make you.
Right, because then that stops you from doing so in basketball. There's you pay a penalty, right? If you go over the cost cap, a luxury. I was like, God, that word is missing. A luxury tax, and so which is what that is, right? You can only spend this much. You choose to spend this much. You got to pay a little bit more into the coffers, and so there seems like Golden State that's just like, we're fine with that. I'm rich, and
right.
So this would stop that, right? Because that money is going to your competition.
Your competition, right?
And
so what Brad's saying is, a couple $1 million in the hands of Mercedes, plus their $140 million, is 142 net, and it cost Red Bull 18.
Yeah. So you know what I think? You know what I think they should actually do? Sticking with the monopoly idea, they should just put the money in the middle of the board. And when somebody passes go, they just get all of that money. Like that makes it a whole new level of excitement, right?
Right.
And that pot is just going to get bigger in the middle of that board, and you're just aiming to get that money.
That's right. And we already know Toto's got hotels on Park Place. I mean, that's a reality.
But man, Josh Capito's fighting hard for that pot in the middle.
Oh, yeah. He's got Reading Railroad, and that's about it.
He's got Baltic Avenue.
It's got Baltic Avenue with one house on it.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, so him and Steiner are fighting over that pot in the middle.
Yeah, that's exactly
It's
right.
a whole new level of this game.
Yeah. Let's see. Graham Fuller asked, Hi, Todd, Grace, Paul, a cost cap question. Which year, or was there a year for the cost cap when the teams could exceed it but not be penalized? Yes, that was 2020. You're right. He says if it was 2020 trial year and 2021 was the first year of the hard rules, should 2020 have had more guidance for the team? Then regarding 2021 alleged breach by Red Bull, it's really just, it really is a breach or a different interpretation of the rules. It seems like opening Pandora's box would be easier. Keep up the great work. Well, thanks, Graham. Yes, I agree with you. I think they probably, and I don't know this for a fact, and I haven't read any articles on it recently. I think 2020, you're right, was the practice year.
Yeah. That's also what Zach's letter said.
Right. And so 2020 is the first year which they're just now reconciling, right? In 2022. They're just now getting to the end of the audit process from last year. So they would have turned over all the information by March for last year, and it's taken this long to reconcile. So that first year, they probably went through similar, processes, but I'm not sure things could have changed in how they were classifying things. The team personnel could have changed. Maybe Red Bull took that first year, looked at the process and what the FIA are looking at, and then made adjustments for this last year, and what they interpreted, which is included and what's not. It's hard to know. But yeah, obviously this didn't evidence itself. But anyway.
But a dry run is a dry run, whether it's a presentation for a conference or your cost cap for Formula One. The reason why you do a dry run is so that people give you feedback and you can modify what you're doing, right?
Right.
So if there isn't going to be any amount of, hey, we saw that you did this, we would consider that a no-no, and maybe you should try something different for next year. Then there's no point. If you're not getting any feedback, then why have the dry run? Just do what you want, and then they're going to get in trouble.
Maybe they had a dry run, and Red Bull thought, hey, well, here's a place where we,
Of course they did. It's not going to be any different than the technical rules. That's their job. Right. If you aren't cheating, if you aren't trying to break the rules, you aren't working hard enough, right? Why this is just another set of rules for them to be creative with? Why wouldn't that be
all
what
rules
they would do?
Yeah, everyone's creative, like the Frick system from Mercedes or whatever. They're always going to push the limits of interpretation.
Of course, that's their job. And so now instead of it just being, the engineers doing this, now it's their accountants doing it too. But of course, the second you say this is the rule, they're going to figure out some way to just get right up to that line. It's the brother, with his finger at your face going, I'm not touching you, right? Yeah, but you're close enough and it is annoying the crap out of me.
Yeah,
that's what they're going to do.
I agree, Graham. It'd have been nice, but I think this cost cap thing is going to turn into a much bigger issue as time goes on, as they slowly try to tweak it. Zach's already said minimum or a minimal overspend of 5%. 5% is way too much. They're going to be tweaking these regulations for a long time to come, and we'll see. We'll see. I was very much against it. And if you go back and listen to our podcast back then, I was very much against this for the exact reason of what just happened. Not that Red Bull didn't get certified, but that it was leaked to the press on who did what, and letters were leaked, and the confidentiality was breached. These are private companies. All of it, including financials or intellectual property of that company. You're having a third party plow through your P&Ls and your balance sheet. And if you can't trust that information is going to be kept strictly private and between the team and the FIA, then I would not participate as a private company. I'm sorry. Would not do it.
I don't think you have to apologize. I think that is exactly the truth.
If I was Red Bull, I'd say until you fix that crap, we ain't doing it.
I don't know. We just had this conversation, but Again, rule number 1 in contracting, the most important thing to guard is how much things cost.
That's
and like
exactly
you were
right.
saying, is that you don't want your competition's cost list. Right. That is the most sensitive, most proprietary thing that most companies have.
It is.
So once you start going through the books, you're going to face this problem. And I'm not working with Ferrari, you know? It's like day 1 of contracting. So
I know. And another question from
sense.
Cone, he asks, with the accusations around the 2021 cost cap being broken by 2 teams, I went looking on the official F1 website for clarification on what is and what's not included. He gives me the quote, the link to it. He says, how does this work for non-listed parts that relate to the car's performance? Can Red Bull split these costs for the parts it shares with AlphaTauri or Ferrari with Haas, or are the parts they sell subcontracted from the expenditure? Maybe non-listed parts don't relate directly to the car's performance. Anyway, it's all very confusing to me. Can you provide some occasional insightfulness? Yes, thank you, Cone. So my thoughts on it are that non-listed parts are still part of what it takes to create a car, so that would be included cost. But the non-listed parts, you would source. So Williams sources non-listed parts from Mercedes. That'd be an engine and a gearbox, et cetera, et cetera. Those are priced. It'd be very easy to go back and look at last year's invoice or the year before to see what those are valued. So Mercedes couldn't, split cast off parts, part of that cost, AlphaTauri in Red Bull's case, or Mercedes to Williams or McLaren or whoever. So there's a good track record and a good paper trail there about what that engine supply gearbox would cost and what that program cost from a customer's team. But they are performance enhancing portions, because a lot of these, the car wouldn't move without some of these non-listed parts, right? So that's all part of it. That would be included in the cost cap and the cost to produce a car. So all the teams would have to account on that. It is performance related. And I don't think any of the teams with their junior teams, like Red Bull with AlphaTauri, Ferrari with Haas, as you mentioned, I don't think any of those can split the costs of the parts that they share. I think it's still got to be Red Bull's engine costs, and then the cost that AlphaTauri would pay. Now, they could increase the cost. They could decrease the cost. It's hard to know. And there again, that's a great point you bring up, because all of a sudden, if I am Red Bull supplying my in-house engines to AlphaTauri, and normally an engine supply cost, let's call it 20 million or 30 million or whatever it is, 14, 15, 11, whatever it is. If all of a sudden I said, well, that's only 6 million. Oh, okay. Well, that gives AlphaTauri a lot more to spend. So I would think you would have a track record of what they've been spending on those supplies. And I would think that the FIA would watch that closely. But anyway, it's all good points, and how that works.
I think it has to count. You need it to build your car, and we don't have official B teams or customer cars, so
right.
You're still paying for an engine, or
you are. But what you're paying, I guess, could Ferrari?
Yeah, I could mark up my engine to myself.
No, could they mark it down?
I mean, I guess they could do that too, but that's not as much fun as marking it up.
Yeah. So if Red Bull's trying to allow AlphaTauri to spend more, they can only charge them $3 million for engine and gearboxes for the year instead of the $13 they were charging. Right?
Is that kind of like putting a file in the cake, right?
Yeah, right. So, I'm sure the FIA's got to watch all that, and I think, maybe that might fall into that classified as fraudulent.
Yeah, I think that would be the first place you would look.
Yeah, right. In the cake. The file is in the cake.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree. So anyway, all right. Well, that does it for this podcast. That's what we think about all the matters that we talked about. But let us know what you think over at theparcferme.com. Share your opinion. Just do it decorum and civility. As always, thank you so much to our Patreon supporters, because we could not and would not do this podcast without you. And if you like this podcast, go over to Apple iTunes. Give us some love. Give us a good review over there, or on Spreaker, or your favorite podcast app. As always, we would appreciate that. And we will be back next week to talk about the U.S. Grand Prix once again. I'll try to find that Paul Charsley. Until that time, when we do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long, Grace.
See you in 2 weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.